Hi, welcome to Tales Beyond the Grave. Welcome back to another video, and we're here today. We're in Manchester General Cemetery over in Harper, Manchester, and it's a really old cemetery this, and there's some really interesting stories I'm going to tell you connected with this cemetery. Now, I don't think you can have a burial here anymore unless you've got a family plot, but it's a really old cemetery. So I'm going to walk you around and I'm going to tell you some of the stories connected with this cemetery. So Manchester General Cemetery, the first chosen site in Manchester to provide burial space on a substantial scale, and it opened in 1836. And the site was chosen at the sides of the grounds of Hedham Hall, and it was an open design competition for the entrance of and the buildings, and it was won by architect Mr. Moffat, and it consisted of a large entrance for horse-drawn carriages, a non-conformist chapel, and a similar building which combined a registrar office and company offices, and it was in a neoclassic style. The cemetery was officially opened in the 1st September 1837 by Mrs. Walker of White House Colliers, and at the time the cemetery contained a pond and 62 catacombs. The first burial of a stillborn baby and a child, Marion Seggett Watts, aged 9, took place on the 7th of September 1837, and Hedham Hall and grounds were purchased by the public subscription in 1848 and is now called Queen's Park. In 1854 the catacombs were demolished and they were never used, and the pond was drained and levelled for a new burial area. So I'll tell you about Henry Lamont Cooper first. I'm not going to go into much detail about this because Daft Monkey has put a video out a couple of months back called the Salford Manchild. Now you have to go and watch that. I'll put a link to it here now, but go and watch that. It's a fantastic story narrated by Daft Monkey. Now Henry's grave is here, and this guy lived a secluded life. He never went out the door. He was sort of like loved by his mother, but he never actually stepped outside the door and mixed with people. He never heard the sound of a car, and his mother just she was a bit reclusive, used to go to the shops, fetch shopping back, and that was it. And the story is that Henry was discovered in the house on his own after his mother had died, and he couldn't speak. He was still treated like a baby, even though he was like 30-odd-year-old, and it's a sad story really, but he couldn't actually talk, only in sort of like baby talk really. So let's go and show you the grave of Henry Lamont Cooper. It's nice that somebody has visited the grave recently and left a flower there. This is the grave here of Henry Lamont Cooper. As you can see, this is the grave. This is the Salford manchild, and it says Charles H. Cooper, Charles Henry Cooper, Clara Maud, wife of Charles H. Cooper, and at the bottom is Henry Lamont, beloved son of Charles and Clara. And that is the grave of the Salford manchild. And nice that somebody's left a flower there for him. So hope he's at rest now. Now the next one, I've not got a grave for this, but they are buried here in this cemetery, is Henry, Richard and Hilda Caldwell. Now Henry took his two children to work. He worked as a boiler maker, or he attended the boiler at a company on John Dalton Street in Manchester, and he took his two children to work that day with him, and he couldn't have picked a worse day really, because halfway through his shift as he was attending the boiler exploded into fragments, and Hilda, Richard and Henry were rushed to Manchester Infirmary. Now Manchester Infirmary used to be where is Piccadilly Gardens now, that's where the infirmary was, and they were rushed there, but they were too badly injured. Richard died almost immediately, and Hilda and Henry died later of the horrific injuries, burns and scalds. The hospital couldn't save him, and they later, during the day, died of their injuries. Now, the other tragic side to this is Henry's wife was left a widow, and she was at home with another 5 children, including a newborn baby. And just to think what could have happened to them was they'd have been left in poverty. Now, the people of, around John Dalton Street, where Henry worked, had a collection and raised over £158 and 10 shillings to help Henry's wife, who'd become a widow. And that escalates to about, today's money, about £20,000 she was left. And it was put into a trust fund with a broker to ensure that she was given 10 shillings a week to bring up her children. And what a great thing of the community of Manchester to do this, to help such a tragic accident what happened to Henry and his 2 children. And as I show you around this early Victorian cemetery, some of the headstones are tragic really. You get people or children who have been buried here, and it'll say like 2 years, 3 months, 1 year, 5 months, 4 years, 8 months, and it's like with them months, I mean, nowadays you'd put on an headstone probably 4 years old, 5 years old, if your child had died, but back then it was like they were clinging to every last bit of life they could, of them 4 months, 5 years and 3 months or whatever, like they were clinging to them months as long as they could really before they buried the children. As you can see, there's larger stones and monuments here in this area, so as well as pauper graves, you had money people as well buried here in Manchester General Cemetery as well. There's some really big monuments to people who must have been influential at the time to have stones as large as this. But yeah, it's a fantastic cemetery if ever you want to come, and you can see the markers, sort of like the markers here telling you of who's who in the cemetery as well. Well worth a visit if you come just for a walk round. So another one I found in here is Hannah Beswick, and there's a little plaque over there regarding Hannah. Hannah is known as the Manchester Mummy, and she was a wealthy woman who had a pathological fear of premature burial following her death in 1758. Her body was embalmed and kept above ground to be periodically checked for signs of life. Now, the method of embalming back then was not recorded, but probably involved replacing the blood with turpentine and vermilion, which is a pigment. And her body was put on in an old clock case and stored in the house of her family physician, Dr. Charles White. And he made her a bit of a local celebrity, and visitors would view her body at the doctor's house. And back then, the Victorians had a macabre look on life. They used to like the strange and macabre things. And what Dr. White would do at house parties, he'd take them to see the body of Anna stored in his clock, a grandfather clock in the house. Now, Anna's body was eventually bequeathed to the Museum of Manchester Natural History Society, where she was put on display. Now, the museum collection was later transferred to the Manchester University, where it was decided that, with the permission of the Bishop of Manchester, that Hannah should be finally buried. And that happened on the 22nd of July 1868, so that's 110 years after Anna actually died. Now, Anna had this really fear of dying and also being buried alive, and this was due to the fact that her own brother had died, and in his open casket before he was buried, people went to pay the last respects to him. Somebody noticed that his eyes were flickering as he lay there in the casket, and the next thing, he was alive, and he went on to live a long time after that event. But this stuck in Anna's mind really, and this is why she had this fear of being buried alive. So this sparked fear into Hannah for the rest of her life, and she gave Dr. White, the family physician, £25,000, which is about £4 million in today's money, to in the event of a death, that he keeps checking and checking, and that there's no sign of life until he's reassured that she's definitely dead and can be buried. But yeah, poor girl had a terrible fear of being buried alive, and she's buried just around here, but in a pauper's grave. She should have had a lovely grave, really, with the money she left, but she was unfortunately buried in a pauper's grave. Now I can show you the area where we think Anna might be buried. So this here is the pauper section of the cemetery. You can see the ground's really uneven. That's because there was mass burials here. They were exactly what they were, pauper graves. They were pits really, and they were people who had died wrapped in shrouds and placed into the pits until that pit become full and it'd be filled in, and then the next pit would be dug, and that's where the paupers would have been buried. Now, to think poor Anna, who was a wealthy woman, ended up maybe in this section, in one of them pits, is tragic really. And it's just near another grave, this one here. I'm going to tell you about this one as well. So this grave you can see here, this is known as the unknown baby grave, and it's absolutely tragedy what happened. There's so many different stories. I'm going to turn you around and I'll tell you some, but I'll show you in detail what this grave looks like. So this is just near the pauper section in the cemetery, and you can make it out, it's a sandstone grave, so it has actually weathered quite a lot. But let me tell you some of the stories connected to this one. Now the unknown baby grave, I don't know if you can make it out now because it's weathered quite a lot. It's a baby lying down in what seems to be a sleeping position. Now the story's connected to this one. It just lies here, or sits here on its own. And the unknown baby grave, it's said that a mother murdered a baby and left it in a box at the cemetery, and because they didn't know who the baby was, they buried it here and gave it a stone as well. There's also reports of a baby being thrown into a fire by its mother in Harper while she was drunk, and the baby was laid to rest here. Also in 1884, a child found below a headstone in the cemetery by a man wrapped in an old shirt. Again, unknown to anyone. That's another of the stories. And also a mother exhausted with a newborn baby, and she fell asleep with the baby on her knee, and unfortunately the baby rolled off and into the fire, and the baby was buried here in the cemetery. So this is the grave of the unknown baby, and it's just where the pauper section is there. Tragic that there's no name on there. I don't know if you can make out, if I maybe come in a bit closer, you can see it's a baby asleep, lying down. So we've come to the end of the video now. Hope you've enjoyed this walk around Manchester General Cemetery in Harper in Manchester. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Tales Beyond the Grave. If you like, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and please give us a share out. I'm trying to build a channel, so that will help if you give us a share out. And subscribing doesn't cost you anything. All it does is prompts you when there's a new video going out or there's a new post on the page. So I'm going to go on to the next one. Again, you know me by now if you watch my videos at the end. I always say I don't know where I'm going, and that's true. On the next one, I'm not too sure where I'm going to be going on the next video, but the best thing to do is I'll see you when I get there. Thanks for watching. Bye.